My name is Sari Stark. I'm a university researcher in the Arctic Center, University of Lapland, and I work as a with plant ecology and ecosystem ecology, the long-term vegetation change and its interactions with climate change and historical and contemporary land uses. I did that in the University of Oulu. It's about the effect of reindeer grazing on soil carbon and nitrogen cycling in boreal forest and Arctic alpine tundra. I have ungrazed exclosures that I compare with this, like the surroundings. That it's a reindeer range. So reindeer graze basically because they have free access everywhere. So I had several study sites that had these ungrazed exclosures and in several different vegetation types. So that's how you investigate the effect of reindeer grazing. I take soil samples and analyze it. I do measurements both in the field and in the laboratory. So what we are analyzing then in the laboratory are different kind of indices for soil microbial activity, how much carbon dioxide they are releasing and what rate they are mineralizing nutrients in organic form that can be utilized by vegetation. So work package 2 is focusing on the change in biodiversity, both in terms of vegetation and the whole food web. And what we are doing in the work package that, like the motivation number 1 is to utilize all of the data sets that have already been collected during the past decades. So actually in this vegetation work, we don't do that much new field work, but we kind of recognize that a lot of the data that has been already collected is underused and haven't been compiled together for a decent meta-analysis. So we are doing a literature review on all of the evidence on exclosure experiments on different vegetation types, and we are looking at the change in vegetation and soil carbon and nutrient cycles, and that's one of the tasks of the work package. But then a more major task is that we are actually putting together very large data sets on reindeer range inventories. So we are combining data from Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and that results in a network of several hundreds of study sites, and that have been studied for several decades. So, for example, the Finnish and Norwegian data sets, they have 3 different time points, 1 decade apart, and that way we can see that how are different vegetation types changing at the moment, and we do that for predicting that what kind of vegetation types we will have in the future, and to which extent that depends on the land use for reindeer herding. So if is the vegetation changing in a different way in the winter ranges compared with summer ranges, because of course the different range types have very different meaning for the reindeer forage. So in order to be able to predict that how is this climate change induced vegetation change will affect the prerequisites of reindeer herding, we need to understand that what kind of changes are expected in different vegetation types and in different range types. So a lot of the attention has been gone on lichens because they are the main winter forage for the reindeer. So for that reason, many of the exclosure studies have been done in lichen-rich vegetation types that are usually, they are quite nutrient poor heaths or boreal forests. And so there is probably more information on the winter range types than summer range types. We kind of have two different kind of data. So first we have this these exclosure experiments that are like what traditionally ecologists do, that they exclude a factor away when they want to analyze its impact on the ecosystem. But we also have this network of study sites that are located in either in the summer range or in the winter range, and in different reindeer management districts, and that those sites do not have this control in the kind of scientific ecological way, but we only know that we know the reindeer numbers and how the area is used, and we have that change in time in vegetation for those sites. So when we look at the data like this exclosure evidence, so the oldest go back like 100 years. So we actually utilize this border area between Finland and Russia because this fence that is keeping the Finnish reindeer in the Finnish side of the fence is constructed a long time ago, and the other, like the border area, has been completely undisturbed for 100 years. So we really get a long time scale for that. But then this inventory data, so they date back about 25 years, which is a long time range as well. Yes, that is a big piece of the work package, and so we are now in the process of like planning the work among the participants in detail. So, and what kind of questions we find most relevant, that what kind of answers we want to extract from the data. So because the data is so immense, we have to look for it, that what kind of data is available from Russia. It would be really relevant to have it, but that's something that that we still have to look at, that what kind of data. So in this data that we have from the Nordic countries, the advantage is that we have several time points. So we have the same study sites analyzed in late 1990s, and then 10 years later, and then 10 more years later. So we can really see the vegetation trajectories. So how are they changing at the moment? Well, one factor to worry about is the abundance of lichens. So like the amount of lichens is going down, and we still don't understand the reasons for it. And it's not a very good news for reindeer husbandry, because it's such an important forage plant for the reindeer. So, for example, what we are want to look at is how this other vegetation changes, like this greening phenomenon, which means that we get more shrubs and dwarf shrubs. So are lichens declining because of the plant competition? So or is it influenced by the climate change? So the objective is then to to look at different kind of variables in the data, and we kind of have the focus on is in the change in lichen abundance. And then we look at what kind of factors are explaining it the most. In Finland, you can still see a lot of spatial variation in how the amount of lichens is changing. So in some districts, it actually have been increasing and some decreasing. So that's kind of the starting point, that we see contrasting changes in different areas, and we want to understand the reasons that are underlying these changes. So it's like that you have to assume the role of the scientist, that you kind of, you don't have your like any pre-assumptions based on the public discussion, but you just focus on collecting the data. And because it's in the public discussion, all changes in lichen abundance are just automatically interpreted as being something related to reindeer numbers. But it's not, you can clearly see from the different data that it's not the case. And there is a gap in the scientific knowledge at the moment, and between the public discussion. And one of the targets would be to like kind of to bring them more close to each other. Because these images are quite easily explained, that in Norwegian side you have only winter grazing, and in Finnish side you have year-round grazing, and that's it. It's not, it's not explained by the reindeer numbers. We also have people that are more focused on food webs, so kind of the whole food chain, so including like predators and scavengers. For example, that if we compare work packages 1 and 2, that one has this, it has a big scale, but we go to the ground level.
Right.
So it's that both approaches are needed, and they complement each other. And also about this work package that is looking at the like this even more long-term vegetation changes, like this centennial.
Oh, yeah.
So the plan is also that what we are seeing in at decadal timescales, that we compare it with the findings on even longer timescales. And also, of course, that when we are looking at the effect of reindeer herding on vegetation, so we have to take into account kind of the culture behind it, and how it has formulated different kind of practices in different areas, and it's all is very closely intertwined. And we also have people from social science background, like in the work package, to kind of that we have that connection, so that it won't be isolated analysis on vegetation and isolated analysis on the societal drivers, but we do this work together.